have two title fights, UFC 292 and everything underneath. I think I'm 8.5 on just little bets that I've put in. And if you look at every bet that we've made, just even bets that we don't want to make, just our picks on the main event, we're up hundreds of dollars. So if you're not tailing, you're missing out. All right, first off, we'll start with the headliner. Vicente Luque versus Rafael dos Anjos went exactly how I called it. I don't know. Maybe I can say we, but it's a fun fight. Exactly how I thought it was going to go. Two durable guys. I think Vicente Luque showed a lot more promise in his wrestling, and he just looked so secure against a well-rounded ex-champion in Rafael dos Anjos.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I had the same thing. I had Luque by decision too. I didn't see any way that Luque would get Dos Santos out of there, but I also wasn't sure how durable Luque would be at this during for his return. But he looked good. He looked better, and I think the time off really helped him. And Dos Santos, on the other hand, I mean, he skill, technique, and everything was there. It's just size. Luque was way bigger than it just seemed like, because Dos Santos is probably a natural more 155. He fought at 155 most of his career. So, I mean, Luque at 155 versus Dos Santos is a different story, but at 70, it was a good fight and it was a close fight.
Right. If anything, he's a big 155er, so he has the size advantage there. But once he comes to 170, he's just an average Joe, just the same size as everyone else. While Vicente Luque is a pretty big 170 pounder. So I think he definitely used that to his advantage and just showed that time off helped, if anything, and he had a great game plan, came through and executed it. So I'd love to see maybe if he had a third fight with Bilal Muhammad, how that would go. That'd be pretty fun. But now we go to something that cost you a lot of money. So I know last week I went with Hakeem Dawodu in the co-main event, but I did switch my pick last minute to Cub Swanson, which ended up paying off. I don't know, maybe a just decision, but it definitely paid off. How do you feel after taking a loss like that?
I was pissed off. I mean, watching the fight, I did have it 1-1, maybe 2-1, but the judges were all around the place, kind of. Well, two of them were the same, one of them was different. I guess it was a different fight from what I saw, just because I was rooting for Dawodu, only because I had money on him, though. I mean, like, I just had him in my risky bet, so my risky bet didn't hit because of that, but I mean, everything else was on my long shot bet hit, so I was a little pissed off about that one. But I mean, I could see how Cub Swanson won it, especially with how during all those exchanges they had, Cub Swanson was mostly getting the better of him.
Right, for sure. That's what I thought too. I mean, Cub Swanson, he came to bang. He always does. This is why when I came into the sport, he was one of my favorites. He just comes to show out, and he loves to engage in brawls, and he's just that guy. He comes to bang every time, and it's a super fun guy to watch, and definitely think he still has more in the tank. It's just when he goes against super technique heavy guys, just he seems to fade a little. But when they start exchanging, he did win a lot of the exchanges, and I feel a lot of the judging had to do with how you score cage control, because it was just control, no damage being done, no submissions being attempted.
For
just
Dawodu, right?
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, just with the whole fight, Cub Swanson winning the exchanges or Hakeem Dawodu having him against the cage most of the time. So I mean, ultimately, I think the highest criteria is going to be damage every time. So I think with Cub Swanson giving the damage is maybe it misled a lot of people that when Hakeem was just holding up against the cage.
Yeah, the control time, I think, is what maybe kind of blinded me and everyone else. Because during the exchanges, Cub Swanson was catching him. He caught him really good a few times. So, I mean, almost every round he caught him really clean. So, overall, it was a good fight.
Right, especially that Fury at the end of the second round was something fun to watch, right? All right, now we go down to light heavyweight, and a guy who just I can't bet right. Khalil Roundtree wins by TKO KO round 1, 2 minutes and 40 seconds into it. Man, going into this one, I mean, Dawkins did look good, but one thing I have noticed that I didn't catch in his tape prior, but now that I saw it in this fight, is he does have good exchanges, but he gets hit in all of them. And that's one thing he's gonna get hit. Just his defense isn't there enough to be able to be a defensive minded fighter to be able to get out of the way of those punches because he does land. He is quick, but he just doesn't get out fast enough. He goes in fast, just doesn't come out fast, and he gets caught every time. And Khalil Roundtree just shut all that down, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Going into this fight, I said that Khalil would be too fast for him, and I knew Dawkins would look fast, and he did look. He surprised me with his hand speed and everything, his power and everything looked good. It's just his defense. Like he just gets caught every single fight, except for when he fights slower guys, like I said last time. And Khalil, this is the new Khalil. This is the new and improved Khalil because he is not fucking around right now. He's going out there and he's like the most vicious fighter in the UFC right now, in my opinion. Like if you were to go in there and fight Khalil, you would. That's the one guy you wouldn't want to be across the cage or see across the cage. Like I don't think any 205 guys are wanting to put their name in there to fight him.
Right, absolutely. One thing about him that just made me fade him in this fight was just it was just his on and off. You know, he's always on or he's off. It's one or the other. He looks amazing or he looks disgusting. And he's been in the UFC since 2016, so I just thought that trend would continue, but this is 4 fights in a row that he's looked phenomenal in, you know, starting with the Modestas Bukowskis fight and then just so on till now. And it just looks like maybe he is a real contender and he's taking it super serious. Look, he's always been very technical, but this fight just showed a whole nother level to his game.
Yeah, it was a really good fight. It was a fan favorite for sure.
Right. Now we get to Polyana Vienna, the underdog who just ends up losing by submission to a young Yasmin Lucindo. I mean, it wasn't a bad fight. I just thought that Polyana just kept getting caught and just kept, like, she just looked good in the first and then just lost it all instantly.
Yeah, I thought that Polyana would catch her in a submission or something, but it was the opposite.
Right. Yeah.
I thought she had too many fights and much more experience and everything. I thought her experience would play a role in it, and the power of Lucindo. She would just go for a takedown maybe and catch her in a submission. But no, it was a good fight. But she definitely stood out on my card.
Right, absolutely. And then last week, I don't know if you remember me saying, but I said that this fight was going to start out with 4 guys that are low end talent, and hopefully it shaped up to be good fights. And I don't think either of them did. AJ Dobson fight maybe a kind of fun, but I guess we could talk about it. It's 3 rounds. I went all 3 rounds. Decision to AJ Dobson, and another underdog that we hit.
Yeah, Dobson. I had Dobson on all of my parlays. And going into that fight, I was like, I mean, I was pretty confident in him just doing a stand-up fight and everything, just like it happened. I thought it would be a good technical fight, kind of slower, and that's kind of what it came down to. Is just a technical fight on the feet and everything. And I think Dobson mixed in a couple takedowns, but it wasn't like a fan favorite fight. But I mean, it was a good technical fight for both of these guys.
Right, absolutely. And we could move down to the middleweight fight. Another 3-round decision. Josh Frem win over Jamie Pickett. And I mean, Jamie Pickett just has shown us who he is. He's low end talent. I feel like this is it. This is the last fight in the UFC. And he just loses to Josh Frem, who didn't look that good either. It was a dominant win, but it wasn't a good showing. I think we both had some money on Josh Frem to inside the distance, which looked possible, but I felt like he thinks he needed to just secure a win, and just it became such a boring fight. A lot of control, and he had so many chances to just take advantage and maybe finish it with a TKO submission, you know. But I don't know. And then especially the submission in the second round, he had it and it looked like he just let it go. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it looked like he just let it go and just, you know, put himself in a terrible position. And it's just like, man. But I feel like just him. He's better than Jamie Pickett, obviously. I don't think it's very hard to be, but yeah, didn't enjoy that fight very much.
Yeah, that fight was definitely not what I expected it to be. If you watched Josh Frem's last fight against Cedric Dumas, that fight was really good, and he showed like he was doing flying knees and everything. He was just going out there to win. He was going out there for the finish, and then he got on the mic afterwards, and this is what kind of steered me in the direction of Frem by knockout or maybe submission. Thankfully, I put a money line on my parlay, but I mean, submission or TKO or something. He was talking on the mic and he was saying that he told Dana, he's like, I'm sorry, I'm never gonna be in a boring fight. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna go chase a finish. I'm gonna get more finishes. I'm gonna knock Jamie Pickett out and everything. He's talking about getting a knockout and everything, and then he goes out there and he fights like the most safe like fight that he could even. Not he didn't try any. It seemed like even when he was trying to finish him, like he had like finishing opportunities. He wanted to kind of preserve his energy so that he can go all 3 rounds and just secure a win.
Right, exactly. That's what I was feeling with those. Yeah, for sure. I mean, a very disappointing win, I guess. Yeah. But I don't know. By the end of it, I was hoping they were both cut, so I never had to go through that again. But now we move on to UFC 292. It's pay-per-view week, baby. And, man, I think we have a good one. It was shaping up to be an amazing one, but 2 of my favorite fights dropped out, but they did get replaced. Half of the fighters are still on the roster. I think we should start on the early prelims, the middleweight fight. Andre Petroski, who's undefeated in the UFC, 9-2 overall, against GM3 Gerald Meerschaert, who's 35-16. How do you see this fight playing out?
All right, so Andre Petroski on the Ultimate Fighter, he looked really good, and I remember on the Ultimate Fighter they were doing like a competition to see who had the best cardio out of everyone on the show, and Andre Petroski won. But then you see him fight, and all the muscle. I don't know if it's all his muscle or like the jitters, or he gets anxious and whatnot. But you see him fight, and it's like the first round he's going hard, and then the second round and third round you're like, holy crap, he is like gone off the lead. Like he's breathing hard, moving sluggish and everything. And then Gerald Meerschaert, on the other hand, he's almost like one of those guys that goes out there and you're like, you have no clue what's gonna happen. Like his last fight with Bruno Silva, he caught Bruno Silva on the chin in the third round. If you watch that fight in the third round, you see Gerald Meerschaert's energy. It looks like he's just kind of moping around and trying to he doesn't want to be in there. And then all of a sudden he catches him with a hook and then drops him and then gets on top and submits him. So this fight, the odds on this fight are pretty crazy, considering that Petroski's pretty new and Gerald Meerschaert's fought 40, 50 times.
Yeah, about 50 fights.
Yeah. I'm taking Gerald Meerschaert on this one just because his experience and his submission game is insane. He has over 15, 16. How many submission wins does he have? Like almost 20. Almost all of his wins are by submission. So
right, he has 35. Yeah, 35 wins, 27 wins by submission. 77% of his wins are by submission.
Yeah, so if you're taking anything in this fight, Gerald Meerschaert by submission, especially because Andre Petroski is going to be shooting on him. Because Andre Petroski is pretty good at wrestling, so he's going to shoot. And I mean, watch Gerald Meerschaert for Darce choke, guillotine, something to catch him when he's coming in. But I think it's going to be a good fight in the first round. Second and third, I think it's going to start to shift to Gerald, and I think Gerald might get it done in the second, third round maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, I should have prefaced it with the odds. So I have the odds right here. Petroski is going to be a minus 238 favorite to Gerald Meerschaert, plus 195. DraftKings doesn't have the prop bets out, but again, we're together on a fight. This is exactly how I see it playing out. If Gerald Meerschaert wins, it's by submission. If you look at his record, it's either a loss or a submission win. And if you remember, looking at Andre Petroski's fight, if you see his pro fighting, he's only lost, was it one time or twice? I know he has one loss in, it's one loss by TKO. And so you think, oh, if he's going to lose, it's by KO, and Gerald Meerschaert doesn't have power like that. But if you remember, in the tough season that we watched together, he lost by submission to Brian Battle, who's not even a submission guy. He's just a brawler, if anything, you know? And so if he can catch him in a submission, Gerald Meerschaert absolutely can. And I think just with Gerald Meerschaert beats trash cans, but he loses to good fighters. And so here, I think we'll see Andre Petroski get exposed again, because he didn't Ultimate Fighter. He was the #1 pick. He was supposed to be, he was a favorite to win the whole thing, and then bam, I think he went out and lost in the first round to Brian Battle, who went on to win the show. But still, it's just, he got exposed in that fight. and I think the same thing is going to happen here. Absolutely. If you're going to play Gerald Meerschaert, you got to play him by submission. So whenever that line comes out, I doubt it'll move from the normal line too much, but absolutely, when that line comes out, that's something I'm going to hammer this week.
Yeah,
All
another
right.
thing.
Go ahead.
Oh wait, one more thing that's important to note about this fight is Gerald Meerschaert. All of his submission wins, he's got insane strength, and the reach differential between them is it's 77.5 for Gerald and 73 for Andre Petroski. So I would definitely watch that guillotine or a Darce choke coming in when Andre comes in to shoot or something. I'm watching that for sure.
Absolutely. Any front choke is possible when someone comes in to fight. All right, now we have the two tough finale fights at bantamweight. We have Brad Katona, 14-2, won a season of tough already, got cut by the UFC, but now he's back in the finals against Cody Gibson. An interesting fact is Cody Gibson made his debut against Aljamain Sterling, who was also making his debut. And so this goes way back and just shows you the trajectory of two people. You know, they start at the same place. They're debuting in the UFC together. And now one's champion headlining the card and the other one's fighting to get his way back into the UFC against someone who's won the show already. What do you think about this fight?
I did not watch The Ultimate Fighter. I don't even know anything about these two Ultimate Fighter fights.
I got this one myself. Yeah. So Brad Katona, I feel like he's very well-rounded, but I feel like a lot of his game is boring. Not an amazing striker, not an amazing wrestler. He's just a good all-around guy. He's good at wrestling, but it's not like a submission threat. They're all going to be decisions or just holding someone down, nothing insane. But yeah, Cody Gibson's last fight in the UFC was 2015 and he lost the decision. But ever since coming back, he looks better. He looks ready to go in this fight. I don't know. Should I give my lean on these? Because I don't know. I guess I'll go ahead and give my lean. I'm leaning towards Brad Katona. Cody Gibson did look good in his return in tough, but Brad Katona I think is going to squeak out just a decision victory. I don't think Brad Katona should be in the finals. Watching his fight against Timur Valiev, I think his name is, but yeah, he definitely he lost that fight. Like if you watch tough, he got whooped that whole fight, and when they read the decision, I was so shocked because I really thought he won. So I don't think he should be here, but I still think he's gonna take out Cody Gibson, who's not the best fighter. All right, next we got this one. This one's gonna be a good fucking fight. At lightweight, we got Kurt Holobaugh, 20-7 with 1 no contest, going against Austin Hubbard, who's 16-6. If you look at who's had the best fights in the Tough House, it's these two guys. Kurt Holobaugh, I told you to go watch this fight. I don't think you did. Just fought Jason Knight. My goodness, he made Jason Knight look like a nobody. They were brawling like it was not a technical fight. They both went to brawl. They fought a Jason Knight style fight, and Jason Knight lost. It was phenomenal. It was amazing. It was just bang, 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 and it ended with a body shot. So, and then Austin Hubbard beat my favorite to win the whole show, which was Roosevelt Roberts, and it was that was a good fight too. Like these guys come to bang, but I feel like Austin Hubbard's the favorite because I feel like they think he's a little bigger and a little bit more technical, and so he's the favorite. He comes in at a -180 favorite, while Kurt Holobaugh is a +150 underdog. But I'm definitely leaning Holobaugh just from what he showed in that final fight in the house against Jason Knight. All right, now let's get you back involved. We got Gregory Rodriguez, who is so infamous for that scar between his eyebrows. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was one of the worst cuts I've ever seen in my life. You can see the inside of his head. And then he's fighting Dennis. You can say the last name. All right, what do you think about this fight, bud?
I think this fight is going to be a good fight. I think this fight is going to probably end in knockout. Gregory Rodriguez, I didn't really understand how good he was until I watched him fight Julian Marquez. And in the Julian Marquez fight, I was like, okay, Julian Marquez is a good wrestler. He's kind of a good striker. He'll go out there and wrestle him, take him down, throw him around a little bit. And hell no, Gregory Rodriguez went out there and smashed him. And then he went out there and smashed Chidi and Njokuani. I'm taking Gregory Rodriguez in this fight. I guess I'll get my pick on this, the prelim fight, but I got Gregory Rodriguez in this fight. just because of his power and his strength, and he's still young in the UFC. Um, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way I'm leaning to. Gregory Rodriguez is one tough motherfucker we've known, but this guy can bang. He's coming off a knockout of back-to-back knockouts, Julian Marquez, like you said, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and that guy comes to fight too. So yeah, I mean, he's looked very impressive these last two fights, and I think he'll get it done by knockout. I might sprinkle something on knockout, but I definitely think he's going to be the better fighter out there. And next we have a toss-up. This fight is I'm very excited to watch. I'll probably refrain from betting, but yeah, I'm very excited to see this. We have a middleweight showdown from the ex-champion Chris Weidman against Mr. Consistency Brad Tavares. How you feeling on this one?
This one was like one of the hardest ones I had to go off of because going into it, like to pick, going into it, everyone was talking about, like, I heard some dude was giving his predictions, and he was like, this guy Chris Weidman, and I was like, what do you mean this guy? This guy was the greatest fighter at one point. He was the greatest fighter of all time at one point, who knocked out Anderson Silva in his prime, destroyed, just he's taken down almost, I think he's taken down every single opponent he's ever fought, even if he's lost to them. I don't know if that's 100% correct, but just from looking through his past fights, he's taken down Dominic Reyes, he's taken down and Yoel Romero. He's taken down all the greatest wrestlers, and Brad Tavares is not the greatest wrestler. So if you're sleeping on Chris Weidman in this fight, I mean, I'm not betting on this fight because I don't want to bet and then I don't want to get my feelings hurt or anything. But I've got Chris Weidman in this fight because his wrestling and his experience, and I think that the time off will actually be good for him because he fought consistently year after year. He fought savages for the last like 10 years. His whole time in the UFC, he's fought some really good guys, and Brad Tavares is really good. Like, you watched that Dricus Duplessis fight, that was a really close fight, and to see what Dricus has done now. But one thing I noticed about Brad Tavares is when he fights, he sits a lot. He sits on his strikes a lot, and he leaves himself open to counters. And then one thing I noticed in his last fight his fight with Dricus Duplessis, he sat on all of his punches and he left his has kind of a wider stance. And I think that Chris Weidman's going to be able to get in on a takedown on him and drag out a 3-round decision. That's what I'm hoping happens at least. But I mean, I'm taking Chris Weidman just because his striking isn't insane, but I mean, he knocked out Anderson Silva. He still has power, and this time off I think will help him. I'm taking Chris Weidman decision. I think he'll grind out a 3-round decision with him.
Right, absolutely. So to break down the odds on this, it's a plus 215 if you're going to take Chris Weidman and a minus 265 favorite for Brad Tavares. And yeah, so when you look at this fight, you see if Brad Tavares is going to win, it's going to be a decision. This guy doesn't have tremendous power. This guy doesn't have good takedowns. He's just all around decent, I should say. But yeah, and then you have Chris Weidman, who has taken down everyone except one person, Uriah Hall, because that fight was half a second long. But yeah, he has had a takedown in every single one of his other fights. And if you think about who he's fought, I mean, silver medalist, right? Yoel Romero. Very impressive, very impressive. And so I do think he'll grind this one out. Maybe a submission. I don't know. He is up there in age. But definitely, I do see him winning. Maybe a decision. But plus 215, I might rethink betting him. That's a good number. It just depends on what Chris Weidman shows up. Is this an old ring rust Chris Weidman, or is it going to be ex-champ Chris Weidman,
Yeah, there's no way of telling either. It's hard to tell.
Right, for sure. I mean, we'll see. We'll see Saturday night. So next we have the main card. And it starts off with a fucking banger. A fucking amazing, amazing fight at bantamweight. Marlon Chito Vera against Pedro Munoz. And man, when you think of these two guys, they come to fight. Chito Vera's coming off a loss to Sandhagen, right? Corey Sandhagen, who became that's right, yeah. Who's coming off I guess some more wrestling experience, showing off his wrestling. And I felt like Vera looked very gun shy in that fight. I felt like he just wasn't throwing when he could, and it just disappointed me greatly. But before that, we see that amazing run he was on, beating Rob Font, beating Dominic Cruz with an amazing knockout kick. Same thing, knockout kick, Frankie Edgar, beating Davey Grant. Like, he was on an amazing streak, and I think he can pick it back up here. But he's going against Pedro Munoz, who's no scrub. He's been in the UFC a very, very long time, since 2014, and that guy comes to bang too. You know, he comes to fight. He's coming off a decision win over Chris Gutierrez, who's looked phenomenal before that, and so that's a super impressive win. He has a no contest with Sean O'Malley, which I think a fight he was winning. I think he looked great in that fight. The leg kicks were lighting him up. He was landing his hands. I thought that was an amazing fight. And yeah, I'm very excited to see this one. If I had to give a pick, I'm definitely leaning towards Chito Vera to get this one done. I feel like he's motivated and ready to go.
Perfect. We got some differences in this one.
Oh shit!
I think this on the screen, it looks like it's gonna shape out to be a good fight, but I don't think it's gonna be a good fight for the fans. I think this fight's gonna be boring. I think the fight's gonna. I don't think it's gonna be super boring or anything. I just think that Munoz is gonna go out there and he's gonna dance around. He's gonna kick him. He's gonna get him with good shots, hit him, strike, jab him, and everything. And Cheeto, one thing about Cheeto is he's fought 5-round fights his last, I don't know how many fights, 2 or 3 fights. He's fought all 5 rounds against Rob Font and then Corey Sandhagen. The Rob Font one, he got outstruck, but the damage he put on Rob Font was insane. If you see the end of that fight, you see their faces, it's insane. But so it just shows how much power Vera has. But one thing about Munoz is Munoz isn't going to stand there and throw punches like that. He does get in firefights like the Cody Garbrandt fight where he stood there and he went toe-to-toe with Cody Garbrandt, but that's because they're more, I guess, the same level, I guess. And I'm sure he had confidence in his hands against Cody Garbrandt with no chin now. So I'm taking Munoz. I think Munoz is actually I think he's gonna dance around, light him up with some shots. And one thing about Vera is he's a slow starter. So if he comes out slow against Munoz in a 3-round fight, Munoz is gonna scrape by 1 or 2 rounds in there. I think that Munoz will scrape by 1, maybe 2 rounds, and then or the first and the second round, and then the third round, Cheeto will come alive. But Cheeto waits. He sits and waits, and he pressures, and he waits for perfect time. That's one thing. It's hard to judge his fights off of. His timing is really good. Vera has really good timing and really good power. But Munoz is very timid when he fights. He fights if Vera comes at him with a head kick, he's gonna get out of the way. So I think Vera's gonna scrape by a decision win in this one, especially because Vera's never been finished. Neither of these guys have ever been finished. I don't think. I know Munoz hasn't been finished. I don't know about Vera. I think all Vera's losses are decision losses.
Right. Yeah, I don't know much about Cheeto's early career because I know he came to the UFC with quite a bit of losses already. So I'm not too sure on that. But yeah, definitely Munoz has not been finished before. But honestly, I don't know. I see this one going down. I think Cheeto usually is more timid, but he knows this is a 3-round fight. Maybe he's been looking timid because they are 5-round fights and he has to conserve his energy for the later rounds. But I think here he'll definitely get back in the win column. All right, next fight, Damon Blackshear coming off 2 weeks, 2 weeks before his last fight, or did he fight last week?
I think he fought last weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. He's coming off not even a 1 week notice. Yeah, and what a fucking animal stepping in to fight the beast in Mario Bautista. How do you see this fight shaping out? I feel like this was one of the hardest fights to pick in this card.
Yeah, Damon Blackshear, I don't think he has very many fights in the UFC. I do know that his last fight was very impressive. The 3rd ever Twister win in the UFC history, right? Yeah, so his jiu-jitsu, he's really good. But Mario Bautista, his last few fights, he's shown that he's on a different level than everyone else. And his training partner is Sugar Sean, so I think Mario Bautista goes out there. His submissions in his last 2 fights, Mario Bautista, it almost like they weren't close fights. So I'm taking Mario Bautista in this one. I don't know if he gets it done by submission though. I think it'd be probably a decision, but if you were to bet on that one, I'd say just Mario Bautista.
Yeah, so I keep forgetting to give the odds, but let's see. The
Yeah.
odds on that fight is gonna be a wow. They have him way back here. Yeah, there it is. Plus 180 for Devon Blackshear, underdog against Mario Bautista, who's a minus 218. One thing you do have to take into mind when you're picking these bets is that he's coming off a fight. Literally, he's gonna fight a week ago from when he fought. He's coming on like 3-4 days notice. He had to do double weight cut, and just so for that, I'm gonna take Mario Bautista. But honestly, I'm not too impressed with him. I think he puts away scrubs with his submissions, but I mean, who has he really beat? You know, no one too impressive. Jay Perrin, who fucking lost to damn what's his name? Rosas
Oh,
Jr.
and then
Yeah,
yeah,
Brian
retired.
Kelleher, who I don't think is in the UFC anymore. Benito Lopez was a decently impressive, but it's just his submission is way better. But I feel like he doesn't have it here in the Damon Blackshear fight. I just think
Oh,
he's just gonna squeak through with the decision. But I am gonna stick with Batista. All right,
okay.
next fight, my favorite fight on the card. I think Neil Magny, 28-11, the gatekeeper of the welterweight division against Ian. What's his nickname? The Future Gary.
Machado Gary. Yeah, the future. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Ian the Future Machado Gary, since he took his wife's last name. All right, go ahead,
Yeah.
bud. How do you have this fight broken down?
This one is a really good one. I really wish they would have stuck with Jeff Neal because
I know.
I was so confident in that one, and Jeff Neal was an underdog. But then it just makes it so much harder that they picked Neil Magny of all people that they could have picked. It's almost like put up against Ian Gary. It's almost like it's a setup in some way, like because it on you watch Neil Magny's last few fights, fighting all these up and coming guys and shutting the lights, shutting them down. Like D Rod, he put D Rod out. He submitted D Rod. Um, it's so hard to pick this fight for me. All these fights were super hard. This is my hardest one. I've like the hardest, probably the hardest fight I had to choose. But Ian Gary, his striking is legit. His striking is better than Neil Magny's by far. His timing is really good. But one thing I've seen with Ian Gary is he gets caught with counter strikes a lot because he kind of sits in there just a little too long. He kind of sits in the pocket throwing just a little too long, and he gets caught a lot. Um, he got caught by D Rod, I think. Not super bad, but then he got caught in his last fight. I'm not saying his name. Kanan Song, right? Was that Ian Gary's
No,
last fight?
Kanan
Or
Song. No, his last fight. Oh, before D Rod.
oh,
Yeah.
it was Iran. Yeah. So that fight, he got caught big with a big punch, and then the fight before that, two decision wins in 2022. Darian Weeks, that was a really good fight too. And he got caught in both of those fights. And then the D Rod fight, he got caught with a couple punches, but he put D Rod out in the first round. So that was really impressive to me. But Neil Magny is not necessarily known for a lot of knockouts or anything, but he is known for cage control, controlled time, dragging out fights, making it dirty, making it hard. And that's something that Ian Gary hasn't really had is someone who gets in the clinch a lot. He's going to be throwing knees to the body shots left and right. So I'm taking Neil Magny in this fight. I think Neil Magny's going to get done by decision. I have him in a couple of my parlays by decision. I like Neil Magny in this fight a lot, but it's just so hard because he's coming in on. It's not a super short notice. I don't know exactly how far along it was, a few weeks that he got the call to fight Ian Gary. But what a guy to pick to fight Ian Gary, because Neil Magny will shut out the hype.
Yeah, here is where we're gonna see is Ian Gary for real or not. He's 12-0, undefeated, coming off a couple knockout wins. Yeah, and just I mean, his striking is very very good. But then, as you said, we saw in the Kanan Song fight that he got caught and he got rocked early in the first round, and he was almost put out of there. And I think Neil Magny is going to show if this guy's legit or not. And I think he's not. I haven't been very high on him. I did have him by knockout in the Song Kanan fight. Got some cash there. D Rod fight, I was iffy on. I don't think I bet, but definitely showed out. Looked amazing in that fight, but I don't think he's going to get it done here. I feel like you said, Neil Magny's going to just make this a dirty, disgusting fight. You know, inside shots. You know, just everything that he does in all his other fights, and I do think he's going to take a decision as well. Now we get to the co-main event for the women's strawweight contenders. We have Weili Zhang versus Amanda Lemos. I think this is actually a fun fight and something I'm really looking forward to. These two ladies come to bang. You know, Weili Zhang in one of the greatest fights of all time against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and Amanda Lemos coming off just knockout after knockout. You know, she's looked phenomenal. She has heavy fucking hands. Beat Marina Rodriguez, and then she even showed some submission game against the Karate Hottie. So I think she looks very good, and I feel like this is a good fight. I do definitely do have a lean, and that lean is going to be Weili Zhang. She's just shown so many dimensions to her game, and she shows her striking good. The only thing that scares me is when Weili Zhang got knocked out by Rose Namajunas. It shows that she can have her lights put out, and with the hands of Amanda Lemos, you know, anything can happen. But I'm going with Weili Zhang.
Yeah, I agree. Weili Zhang, her last few fights, she's been very wrestling heavy. So you got to keep that in mind against Amanda Lemos. She's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but Amanda Lemos has heavy hands. Of all the women's division fights, Amanda Lemos has probably the most exciting knockouts. Like she comes to fight, and Weili Zhang also does. So this is gonna be a really good fight, actually. Um, I do think that Weili Zhang is gonna use her wrestling though. I think she's gonna dominate her in the wrestling, but I mean it's a 5 round fight. If she can't submit the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I don't think it's gonna be a quick fight. I don't think it's gonna be a finish in the first round or anything. I think Lemos will drag it out. We'll be able to last a couple rounds, but I think it's hard to to predict that one with how heavy-handed she is. But both of them are. But I'm also taking Weili Zhang in that one too, just because of her wrestling. I think the wrestling's gonna get it done for her. I don't think that it's gonna be. I don't think Weili's gonna knock her out. I think if there is a knockout, it's gonna be Amanda Lemos knocking her out. But I'm leaning towards Weili Zhang on this one. Get it done by submission.
Now we get to the main event for the Bantamweight Championship of the World, one of the most exciting divisions in the UFC. And we have a up and coming guy who's on a pretty hot streak. And then we have Aljamain Sterling, the most dominant champ in Bantamweight history. And I think this is definitely going to be a fun fight. But I'll let you break this one down.
I wanted to hear what you're gonna say. This fight was super hard for me to pick too because I love Sean O'Malley, but Aljamain Sterling has proven himself to be the bantamweight goat. So it's gonna be a really good fight. Aljamain Sterling, his striking, I don't think his striking is as good as Sean O'Malley's. His pressure in the early rounds may be able to withstand against Sean O'Malley, but the obviously everyone knows the fight is whether or not Sean O'Malley can knock him out in the first couple rounds, or if Aljamain Sterling can take him down and drag the fight out, possibly submit Sean O'Malley. This fight was hard for me to pick too, just because how good Aljamain Sterling is. But I mean, if you look at all the things and all the stuff that Aljamain Sterling has said about coming into this fight. He said he didn't want to fight Sean O'Malley. He said that he wants to move up to 145. He's saying that he wants to submit himself as a GOAT after beating Cejudo, and then he accepts a fight with Sean O'Malley. I don't think all this just seems like a recipe for a disaster for Aljamain Sterling. Because if you think of it, Sean O'Malley wins this fight, he destroys everything that was set in place for Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling, on paper, wins this fight, moves up a division, fights at 145, Volkanovski or Holloway or someone, maybe Topuria, that'd be a good one. He moves up, fights in the 145-pound division. Sean O'Malley honestly isn't like a win-win situation. If he loses a fight, he probably is the next up to fight for the title since Cheeto's fighting Pedro right now. They're both kind of in the same situation, but Sean O'Malley's ranked higher. And then Marab. So on paper, Aljamain wins this fight, moves up to 45. Marab comes up, fights O'Malley, wins the title, and everyone runs off into the sunset. But I just think that Sugar Sean is gonna just ripple that whole ideology of that happening. I think that he's gonna go out there. I think it's hard to say, but I'm feeling Sean O'Malley by first or second. I think that if either of them wins, it's gonna be within 2 rounds. I just don't see a possibility of this fight going past 3 rounds, especially because Sean O'Malley's never been in a 5 round fight. people keep saying that, and I don't think he ever will be in a 5-round fight. I think he finishes this fight in the second round. If on paper, Sterling wins this fight, but I don't think that's going to be the reality. I think Sean O'Malley ruins all of his dreams. I think he just destroys everything.
Rocking the Sean O'Malley shirt, you know where I'm leaning. So looking at this fight, you look at Sean O'Malley and you look at his track record. He has one loss, and that was to Cheeto Vera. But if you let's go all the way, way back. He has a win over Tyrion Ware, a decision. Wasn't too impressive. He looked all right. That was him coming into the UFC from the Dana White's Contender Series. And then next he fights Andre Sukumtat, and he has that foot injury. He didn't look too good in that fight either. He was going to squeak out a decision, and then he hurts his foot, and he falls to the ground, and he can't get up, you know? And what does Andre Sukumtat do? One of the worst fight IQ decisions ever. Falls him to the ground and just sits in his guard for the rest of the fight. Should have been a loss on Sean O'Malley's record. Next we go to him fighting Quinones. Another trash can. Knocks him out. He goes to fight Eddie Wineland, who's washed at this point. He's one of the greatest bantamweights in bantamweight history. You know, he's been here for forever. Knocks him out. Another trash can. And then he fights a real fighter in Cheeto Vera. Cheeto Vera fucks his legs up. Gets him down in the first round and TKOs him. He says, "Oh, I lost because of my leg." He didn't. It wasn't a stoppage because her leg was hurt. It was a stoppage because elbows were raining in on his head. You know what I mean? That is not an excuse. We look at his next fight, Thomas Almeida, who was fucking getting knocked out left and right, gets knocked out in the third. Like, this guy has no chin, and it took him 3 rounds to knock him out. Comes in, a guy coming off the street. He said, Dana said, "Hey, Chris Moutinho, you want to fight? You come in here. You have a 9-5 record. Get in here. Come fight Sean O'Malley." Takes him 3 rounds to get rid of that kid. He lands his shot, but I mean, wasn't too impressed. He fights Raulian Paiva, who's not even in the UFC. None of these other guys that I've named are still in the UFC. They're all retired or cut. And this guy, Raulian Paiva, same thing. He looked decent coming in, but proved to be a trash can. Knocked him out in the first round. Not good. And then he fights Pedro Munoz, who's a good fighter. Not a great fighter. Never been a great fighter. Never been at the top of the division. Just floated somewhere around the middle. And he starts losing that fight. I don't think he would have squeaked that one out. His legs were getting beat up just like the Cheeto fight. Think about it. His skinny little legs were getting chopped down, and Pedro Munoz was landing, winning exchanges. I think Pedro Munoz was going to whoop his ass if that fight continued. And then we get to the Peter Yan. Finally, a good guy that he's fought. And what happened? He got whooped and squeaked the decision somehow. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe how that one turned out. That one's probably worse than the Patty the Batty versus Jordan Flash Gordon decision.
No way.
I don't know. Even Sean O'Malley, like you said, remember how you said Cub Swanson knew he lost that fight? Sean O'Malley knew he lost that fight. Even after the decision was read, he was like, yeah, I won that fight. Come on. His voice was shaky. And then now we get to now. That's it. That's his whole fucking resume is nobody's. And when he fought someone good, lost to Cheeto. No contest to Pedro Munoz. Who knows what would have happened. And got a robbery against fucking Peter Yan. All this to say he's going against the greatest bantamweight to ever exist, Aljamain Sterling, who's on a fucking amazing streak, finishing guys. Look, greatest bantamweights of all time, greatest fighters of all time. Henry Cejudo, Triple C, best fight IQ. He beat him. He out-wrestled him. Outstruck it. Like, he just won that fight. And then same thing with TJ Dillashaw, who came in with the hurt shoulder, sure, but still did what he had to do against him. And then we saw in that Peter Yan fight, wasn't looking good in that first one, but he made the changes. He came in ready on the second one, and he just did exactly what he had to do. His cardio was back on, which the first fight, his cardio was way off, and I don't know what was happening, but that definitely wasn't him, because he's a cardio machine, and he just ran out of gas in that first one. But you see, when he got his legs up under him on that second fight, whooped him. Went through all this just to say Aljamain Sterling, by submission. Honestly, here's some advice that I'm going to give. If you're going to bet Sean O'Malley, I don't think under 2. I think by decision. I think he's not going to knock Aljamain Sterling out. If anything, knock on wood, if anything, maybe a knee coming up the middle, just like Marlon Moraes did. But that's the only way I see him knocking out is generated force from the knee. That's the only way I see it happening. So if you're gonna put some money on Sean O'Malley, I think it's plus 900 for him at decision. And if he gets to a decision, even if he loses all 5 rounds, 10-8, he's gonna squeak the decision out because that's what the UFC wants. So I'm going Aljamain Sterling by submission, greatest bantamweight of all time. He's gonna move up and do great things at featherweight.
Oh my god, you're crazy! Pedro Munoz fight. Did you watch the fight?
I rewatched it today.
When you rewatch the fight, you see him throw all the leg kicks. You're like, oh, that's pretty good. And then Sean O'Malley lands a clean flush punch right to the eye, and then he's going like this the whole time for like 2 minutes, just pounding on his eye. And then Sean, boom, again, and then he's doing this to his eye, and then gets poked in the other eye. He's like, I'm out of here. Like at first, when I watched that fight, I was like, Pedro Munoz is gonna probably just do this until he wins. This little kick him in the leg, jab him, boom, boom. But then you rewatch the fight, and Sean O'Malley paws him right in the eye. And then he's sitting there just touching his eye, scratching his eye, and then again in the eye. And then the next one, boom, game over. And then the Peter Yan fight, no one expected Sean O'Malley to win that fight. No one expected him to even get past the first couple rounds. In the third round, Peter Yan comes in there, gets sliced with a knee right up the middle, almost dropped, and then goes in there, gets a takedown at the very end. Sean O'Malley scrapes by a decision. That one was very questionable. That one was hard to judge. I don't know. But, I mean, if you go off damage, he damaged the hell out of him in that third round. And then the second or first round, he hit him with that overhand, that nice combo, and then Peter got him right back. So you know that Sean O'Malley has a chin. It's just, I mean, on paper, if the better guy wins, obviously it's the better MMA fighter, obviously is Aljamain Sterling with his wrestling. Just mixing in his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu and his striking is a little all right. He got head kicked by a 5-foot-tall Henry Cejudo. So I mean, if you get head kicked by Sean O'Malley, that's the only thing I see about this fight that's hard to know what's going to happen. Is Aljamain is coming off of a fight with a 5-foot-tall Peter Yan, 5-foot-tall Henry Cejudo, and now he's fighting the 6'4" Sean O'Malley. He's going in. I just think that Sean is going to catch him, even though their reach is the same, or nearly the same. I think that Sean, if he catches him with a leg kick or one of his flashy little knees or something, it's just going to be a different fight. But I definitely don't see this fight going to a decision. And honestly, Aljamain Sterling said that he wants to win the fight by knockout. He said he envisions winning by TKO second round. And if I see anyone winning the fight on either side, I see both of them. I don't think the fight is won by anything but knockout on either side.
Yeah, we'll see. This is definitely going to be a fun fight. I probably won't be seated for this one, but man, I am so looking forward to it. All right, So now we get to the good part where we make some fucking money. I'm going to go first, and I'll give you my safe parlay. My safe parlay for the week. I feel very confident. You faded me in some of them, but this is it right here. So confident in these. Ready? First leg is going to be Weili Zhang, minus 210 favorite. And that's the first leg. Second leg is going to be Chito Vera, minus 198. That's my lock of the entire card. And then I have Gregory Rodriguez, minus 355. And Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling, minus 258. All that comes out to a plus 254 safe bet. Cash it already. Let's hear your safe bet.
My safe bet is a lot better than yours. I have 3 legs of mine. In mine, I kept open because it's the fights are just so close on paper. O'Malley versus Sterling, fight to end in knockout, plus 180. That fight, I'm really high on that one. I just think that if either of these guys are winning, it's by knockout. Second leg, Vera by KO or Munoz by decision, plus 100. So you got a double victory, double chance, alternate method. So Vera by KO, Munoz by decision comes out to a plus 100. Because if Munoz gets it done, he's getting it done by decision. And if Vera gets it done with his timing, he's getting it done by KO. And then Zhang Weili by submission or Lemos by KO, plus 165. I think that's pretty accurate, being that Zhang Weili has won her last 3 fights or 2 fights by submission, and she's been so wrestling heavy. and then Lemos with how heavy her hands are, Lemos by KO. That all comes out to a plus 1,384. So $10 wins $148.
All right, that's ridiculous. All right, so I'll go ahead and give you my long shot, and I'll tell you right now, I'm very, very, very confident in it. I know what Aljamain said about the TKO, whatever. If this guy gets one hold of Sean O'Malley, he's done. One hold, he's gonna ride him like a backpack and take his neck. Aljamain Sterling. Hey, what?
His coach does jiu-jitsu tournaments. O'Malley, they're doing a lot of and you see how good Mario Bautista is at and they came up together.
I don't care. Yeah, Bautista's fighting scrubs, like I said. Anyways, that's all they do. They have a fucking amazing manager. Put them against scrubs and get them in title fights. Okay. Anyways, my first leg is Aljamain Sterling by submission. Gets one hold of him, he's done. He's over with. And then my second leg, which I'm pretty sure you stole from me, is you're gonna steal from me once you hear it, is gonna be Neil Magny by decision plus 550. All this comes out to a plus 1525. Amazing odds for two very likely things. I think if Neil Magny's gonna win, it's gonna be by decision, and I think it's gonna happen. So that's your long shot bet.
Well, first of all, Neil Magny wins nearly all of his fights by decision, especially if they're good fighters. So obviously I had Neil Magny by decision in my long shot. And then I had Vera by KO, Munoz by decision because I'm so high on that one. I'm really confident in that one. And then O'Malley, Sterling ending in KO. So it's pretty much close to my safe bet, except I added Magny by decision. And that comes out to a plus 3,540. $10 wins $364. Those are the only fights that you can look at. Like, what are you going to put money on? Chris Weidman by decision, maybe, or Gerald Meerschaert by submission, but those ones are just kind of far out for me. The Magny by decision is a given, and then if Vera wins that fight, it's going to be by KO in a 3-round fight. So he's going to either turn it on fast and KO him, or he's going to get decisioned by Munoz, who's never been finished. And then O'Malley Sterling said it himself. He wants a TKO win, 2nd round. And you saw what he did to TJ Dillashaw, and TJ Dillashaw wrestled. He got TJ Dillashaw to the ground and hammer fisted him, beat the shit out of him, flattened him out, even though TJ Dillashaw is one of my favorite fighters. He went out there and destroyed him on the ground, took him down and did that to him on the ground. So I really think if either of these guys win, it's going to be by KO.
All right. That's not bad. I don't hate them. But I do want to see definitely look into the amount of takedowns Weili Zhang is going to get over 2. I feel like it's safe. I feel like that's something that's going to cash. Gerald Meerschaert, if you're going to play it by sub. Kurt Holobaugh, probably win by knockout if we're looking at props. Let's see. Weidman, maybe a decision. Sprinkle some on decision. Like I said about O'Malley, if you're going to sprinkle some on him plus 900 for a decision, I mean, the UFC wants him to win, so if he gets to the scorecards, probably going to win. Yeah, I think that just about wraps up episode 4, and man, I'm excited. Pay-per-view week always gets me so hyped. It's still early in the week, but we still have a lot more hype to go, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm just gonna close it out. So go ahead and say what you got.
No, I was just gonna say I'm excited to see how everyone steps on the scale. I'm excited to see how Aljamain looks on the scale. I'm excited to see how Magny looks on the scale too. I guess it's close, but yeah, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be fun. All right, and we'll see y'all next week with our pockets a little fatter.